She walks into every room and knows exactly who to be. In the boardroom, she's decisive, credible, authoritative. In the ministry, she's anointed, steady, full. At home, she's present, patient, and put together. And then somewhere between 11 p.m. and midnight, when the house is quiet and nobody needs anything from her, she sits with a question she has never said out loud. Who am I when I am not performing? If you felt something just now, stay with me, because that question is not a spiritual crisis, it's a diagnostic finding. And guess what? It has a name. Welcome to the Shift 9. I am Oluseye Ashiru. I am the founder of Shift into Legacy, a leadership development ecosystem for high achieving women. I'm also a psychotherapist, an executive leadership coach, and someone who has spent over a decade sitting across from some of the most accomplished women I've ever met, watching them carry something that they couldn't name. The Shift 9 is a 9-episode series where I walk through each of the 9 fracture points in the Shift into Legacy diagnostic framework. And this is a part of our Shift Conversation series. I'm here not to tell you what is wrong with you, but I'm here to give you language for what has been happening that is beneath the performance. You see, there's a difference between a flaw and a fracture. A flaw you manage. A flaw you apologize for. A flaw you try to overcome, but a fracture, you close it. And you can't close what you've never been able to name. That is what this series is for. Each episode takes one fracture, one of 9 specific structural gaps that show up in the lives of high achieving women, and walks it all the way through. What does it look like? What does it cost? What does it protect? And what does it limit? And we also look at what becomes possible when that fracture is finally addressed. Today, we start with the one that I see most often, the one that sits underneath almost everything else, and that is the identity fracture. So before I describe the identity fracture to you, I want to tell you what it is not. It is not low self-esteem. It's not insecurity. It's not imposter syndrome. The woman carrying the identity fracture is usually the most confident person in the room on the outside. Okay. She's not questioning her value. She's not. She's just never been fully sure who she is outside of what she produces. And there's a difference. There's a difference between that. Let me give you the clinical, precise definition of the identity fracture. So the identity fracture is the gap between the version of yourself that you perform and the person that you actually are. Not the person you aspire to be, not the person you are working on becoming, the person who exists when nobody else is watching them, the person who has never had to earn our way into the room, the person who does not need to read the room before she speaks. Most of the women that I have worked with have very little access to that person. And it's not because she's not there, but it's because she's been buried under years, sometimes decades, of performing a version of herself that was needed, that was expected, or that was rewarded in every environment that she found herself moving through. And so this woman became extraordinarily good at becoming what the room required of her. And somewhere along the way, she stopped knowing what she actually is when there's no room to perform for. The identity fracture is not about confidence. She's already confident. It's about this. She can tell you exactly what she does. She can tell you exactly what she's built. She can even tell you exactly what she believes. But if you were to ask her quietly, privately, with nobody watching you, who she is outside all of it, she would pause. And that pause right there, that is the fracture. Let me share with you what the identity fracture looks like in real life. How can you tell if you have an identity fracture, for example? You see, every fracture has a signature. And the signature that it has is the specific pattern of thoughts, decisions, behaviors that particular fracture produces in actual life. Not in theory, but in your everyday typical life. So let me walk you through the identity fracture signature. As I describe it, I want you to begin to notice what is landing for you. Not the one that you think may apply in theory, but the ones that truly make you go quiet for a second. The ones that make you think privately, not out loud. Okay? That is what I'm going to be describing to you today. So the first signature marker of the identity fracture is the shapeshifter. And this woman moves between environments with remarkable ease. In one meeting, she's analytical and precise. In the next one, she's visionary, inspirational. At a networking event, she's warm, magnetic. She can go through the conversations very firm, very clear. She's excellent in every single room. But here's the thing that no one is really talking about when it comes to this woman, is that she's honed that gift as a survival strategy. She's learned that probably that being good at reading a room will give her what she needs, the access, the approval, the safety, and the love she needs. And she's gotten so good at this thing, it's become automatic for her. And now she doesn't even know who she is anymore. She walks in, reads the room, in 30 seconds, she becomes what that room needs. The problem is not that she can do this. The problem is that she cannot turn it off. So she's always on. And even the bigger problem that she finds is that when she's finally alone by herself, that version of herself that she actually sees is not even who she really is anymore. The second signature marker of the identity fracture is the validation loop. She doesn't speak in validation in obvious ways. She's not the woman who's needing constant reassurance, so it's hard to even be able to see. She doesn't fish for compliments, so she looks like she's secure on the outside. But watch her in a room where her authority is not immediately recognized. Watch what happens to her when someone questions her expertise. Watch what happens to her when she's treated like less than she's already built. Then she starts to over-explain herself, justifying herself, demonstrating to everybody, proving her worth, or she withdraws. Both of these things show the fracture. Because a woman that is operating from a secure identity doesn't even need the room to confirm who she is. She knows that she's an authority in any room. She's not waiting for the room to grant her authority because she knows the authority that she carries naturally. The identity fracture is not about whether you know your worth. It is about whether you need external confirmation to feel it. There's a difference between knowing your worth and needing somebody to reflect it back to you before you can operate from that worth. And that gap between knowing and needing, that's where the fracture lives. Let's go to the third signature marker for the identity fracture, the performance layer. This is the one that most people never see from the outside, because this woman has built what I call a performance layer. And the performance layer is the highly functional, highly credible, highly capable version of herself that she's learned to present to the world. And the performance layer is excellent because it gives her extraordinary results. It earns her remarkable recognition. It leads organizations and ministries and families with real skill. But this is what it costs her. Maintaining that performance layer is exhausting in a way that she cannot explain to anyone around her. Because from the outside, everything looks fine. From the inside, she's constantly managing how she comes across, managing what people think, managing the gap between who she is presenting as and who she actually is on the inside. And that gap keeps widening. Not because she's getting worse, but because the performance keeps getting more sophisticated, while the actual woman beneath all that performance hasn't been attended to in years. So you see that. And then the next signature marker, number 4, is the restlessness that has no name. She's achieving, but then she feels nothing. Or she feels something briefly, maybe a few days of satisfaction, and then the restlessness comes back. She's on to the next thing, the next goal, the next level, the next achievement. People around her are calling it ambition. She's calling it drive. But if you sit with this woman quietly enough, she will tell you for free that it's not quite either of those things. It's more like she can't be still. What she has built, she can't even enjoy it because what she's building doesn't feel like her. She built it well. She's proud of it. But there's a version of her life, a direction, a voice, an expansion that she's looking for. She hasn't been able to locate it. And so she keeps moving because moving feels safer than sitting with that question of, who exactly am I underneath all of these achievements and underneath all of these layers? I want to give you 5 questions that will help you to examine your own identity fracture. And these are questions from the Shift into Legacy diagnostic framework. Every fracture gets examined through these 5 lenses. I'm going to walk you through all 5 for the identity fracture, and I want you to sit with each one of them. Don't rush through them. Write your answers down if you can. One honest, specific sentence per question is actually worth more than 10 vague paragraphs. So let's get into the questions. So question 1, show me. Where do I see the identity fracture showing up most visibly in my life right now? Not the pattern, but one specific recent moment that I can name. Maybe it was a meeting last week where you over-explained yourself to someone who was questioning you. And then you drove home frustrated because you felt like you had given away your authority. Maybe it was a conversation you had where someone asked you what you actually want, and then you realized you answered by describing what you're building rather than who you really are. So one specific moment, recent, that's your answer for question 1. So question 2, cost me. What has the identity fracture cost me in the last 90 days? I want you to be very specific. Name 3 specific costs. 1 relational cost, 1 professional cost, 1 personal cost. The relational cost might be a conversation you did not have because you were performing in a room that needed a particular version of you. And so you couldn't afford to be fully honest. The professional cost might be an opportunity that you didn't take because it required you to step fully into an authority that you're not sure that you own. The personal cost might be the energy that you spent managing how you come across, that you did not have time left for the things that actually matter to you because you were busy explaining yourself. So name them specifically, not general, name the actual costs. Question 3. Question 3 is protect me. This is the most important question in this set of questions. What has the identity fracture been protecting you from? I want you to be really take time. I want you to really take time to sit with this one, because the identity fracture has been protecting you from something. That's why it has been so difficult for you to close, right? Maybe it has been protecting you from rejection, because if you perform the version of yourself that the room needs, you get accepted. If you show up as fully as yourself, what if they don't want you to do that? And so you hold back. Maybe it's protecting you from the responsibility of your own authority. Because if you fully own who you are and what you carry, then you are actually accountable for what you do with it. And sometimes that can be scary. It can be terrifying because you're like, what if I make a mistake? Maybe it's protecting you from a very old grief. The grief of the environment where the real version of you was not taken, was not accepted, and all of that. And it made you feel not very welcome. I don't know which one of them it is for you, But I want you to ask that question and answer that question until you get the answers that you need. Question 4, serve me. How has the identity fracture been useful for you? This question is going to feel uncomfortable for you, I can assure you, okay? But I need you to stay with it. Stay with that answer that it's going to give you. Because the identity fracture has been serving you. That's the truth. The ability to read every room and to give you what it needs. That has really been good for you because it's made you adaptable. It has opened doors for you. It has earned you trust. It has given you access. The performance layer, of course, is produced you real results. It's giving you real things, real answers. It's even giving you protection in spaces where they needed a kind of presentation to show up. So the fracture is not a malfunction. In the context it was formed in, it worked. The question you have to answer is, does it still need you? And when you answer that question, you begin to actually close that fracture gap that you have. Question 5, limit me. What ceiling is the identity fracture creating in your life? What specific next level in your leadership, your relationships, your calling, or your legacy does this fracture block you from reaching right now? I will tell you what I see most consistently. This fracture creates a ceiling on authority. She can be given authority. She can be placed in positions of authority. She can even lead with extraordinary skill. But the authority that is fully owned, the kind that does not need anyone to grant it, the kind that walks into a room and does not need to read the room first, that kind of access, that kind of authority, that level is blocked. And it's blocked to her not because she's not ready for it. It is blocked to her because she doesn't yet fully know completely who she is outside of what she has built. And the moment she finds out who she really is, that ceiling breaks. And it's breaking because she now knows who she's been called to be. She's now been able to address the issues, the fracture, right from the roots. I want to close this episode with something I say to every woman who begins this diagnostic work. Naming the fracture is not the wound. Naming the fracture is the beginning of the closing. You're not discovering a problem today. You're locating the root of a pattern that you've been living with. And that's not a small thing. Most people spend their entire lives working around their fractures, managing them, working harder than they need to, building over them. The women who close them, they are the women who build differently, not better, but differently. If what you heard totally landed for you today, if you heard your own story in this identity fracture signature, then I want to invite you to take the next step with us here. The Fracture Point self-audit is free. It takes only 15 minutes, and it will tell you which of the 9 fractures is running loudest in your life right now. So right away, go to shiftintolegacy.com/audit to take the free audit. And if you have already done the audit, you've already named the fracture, and you're now ready to close that gap, let me invite you to join us in the Shift Labs residency. 12 months, 3 schools built around your specific fracture profile. The residency begins very soon, and applications are open at shiftintolegacy.com/residency. I am looking forward to connecting with you even much more in this Shift conversation series. One more thing before I close. The woman carrying the identity fracture is not weak. She's not failing. She's not broken. She's extraordinarily capable. She has built real things. She has led with real skill. She has served with real love. She has just not yet fully met herself. And the day that she meets herself, everything that she's already built becomes the foundation for something she has not yet been able to imagine. And that is exactly what the shift is. I can't wait to see you in episode 2.